Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Williamsburg City Council work session of October 6th. If we can have everybody take a seat, please. Thank you. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams. Here. Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Ms. Kernshear.
Here.
Okay, takes us to council preview. Drew, do you want to go over the agenda for Thursday?
Sure. So we have presentation of Excellence in Service Award to Lisa Wake. And then under public hearings, the first one is to handle the changes to the zoning code related to vape shops. And then the second one is to talk about the charter amendments that are planned for the upcoming General Assembly session. Under new business, we have the authorization to apply for a grant for Highland Park through the CDBG program. Then we have authorization to purchase a dump truck. It's within budget, just more than I can approve. Then we have some erosion and sediment control changes to that ordinance. And then the final item is authorization for a contract with JMI to begin work on the African American Heritage Trail signage.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. And if anybody in the audience would like to come forward and address council, please come forward. Seeing no takers, I will close the public comment portion of the meeting and we'll move on to background presentations and discussions. And first we have the consideration and direction concerning the 2026 draft legislative agenda. Ms. DeWitt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. It's that time of year. We're getting ready for the General Assembly 2026 session, which will start in January. So as we prepare your draft legislative agenda for consideration, we always talk with our community partners, and you can see the list here: Colonial Williamsburg, William and Mary, the Tourism Council, Visit Williamsburg, Chamber of Commerce, Peninsula Community College, York County, and James City County. We have done that outreach, and we'll be hearing from them over the next month. We also have support organizations that we work with closely: the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, the Transportation Planning Organization, the Virginia Municipal League, the Local Government Management Association, Virginia First Cities, and then professional organizations that employees belong to. And you can see the list here where we receive insights about what might be upcoming and for either playing offense or defense with the General Assembly. So as we organize your legislative agenda, it falls into these four categories. We have an intent statement. We also talk about priority issues. Here we ask you to limit that to no more than 3 or 4 to have the most impact in a session where they will see thousands of bills and they're not there for a terribly long time. We ask that you try to focus on 3 to 4 issues, but we'll have other issues of focus, of course, often included, and then partner agencies, if they request it of us and it makes sense, we ask that you include some of their issues on your agenda. So the first thing we do is look at what did we work on last year that may have carried over to this year. And this will be no surprise. We have 4 issues in that category. The first one being local zoning authority. Every year we've seen the General Assembly receive pressure from various groups to limit our local zoning authority in the name of all kinds of good causes. So we think it's very important that local land issues remain local, where they impact people the most and where the clearest understanding of those issues are. And we ask that you consider again that the General Assembly not erode any of your authority there. Secondly, this is another carryover issue, is continued requesting state funding for the extension of the Capitol Trail and Trail 757. As you know, the Capitol Trail links Jamestown to Richmond in both directions. It's a multi-use path, and its plan is to extend that through Williamsburg on down to Fort Monroe, so asking for state support to do that. And of note, as part of the larger Hampton Roads effort, this trail will also extend by going across the ferry to Surrey and then down to Virginia Beach. So it is a truly regional Hampton Roads effort, but we're asking for funding for the Williamsburg section of that. The third thing is passenger rail. This has had an interesting turn of events. So we have been planning and advocating for a third Amtrak train to come to Williamsburg to go to the Northeast Corridor, and that was planned to happen in 26 or 27. With the construction of the Long Bridge in the DC area, it turns out that we are going to get a bus to do this, and they tell us it will be a direct bus. It will not stop. It will go from Williamsburg directly to DC, and it will have Wi-Fi. So during the construction of the Long Bridge, a bus will be added to Williamsburg, and then we will get the third train once that construction, it's probably a 5-year construction period. And my best understanding of that is it's limited the times of day that they can work on that train or that bridge to try to keep rail and cargo traffic moving along the Northeast, and so that eliminated, it's not just us, but trains from destinations. So not a third train yet, but a bus. So.
But in that, didn't we lose a train? Aren't we going to one train only?
No, my understanding is we'll keep our 2 trains and get a bus, but that's how I read the letter, but we can look into that.
All right. Because if we're going to lose a train, maybe.
If we're going to lose a train, it's a different story.
Advocating for that as well. But.
Right. We will look into that, Mr. Mayor. Okay. And then this was also on your agenda last year. The James City County Clerk of the Circuit Court, which we share with James City County, is requesting, again, she and all the clerks of circuit courts around the state. Back in 2008 with the Great Recession, the state took back some of the excess fees from localities that help support the clerk of the circuit court, and they're asking for those to be reinstated to help fund their operations. So the other categories we have, so we have those carryover issues. Another category we have is staff-driven issues. And we do have 2 that have come up this year. We do not always have issues in this category, but this year we do have 2. One, Mr. Trivett has already mentioned, is some charter amendments. There's 3 of those requests, which are on your agenda for Thursday to go through the public hearing process. The first is to align our charter elections with the state requirement that they'll be moved to November. And the other 2 are finance department operational issues, one regarding the title of the finance director, and the other about the operation of the city manager's authority to move funds within the budget, which is something that has happened here as long as I've been here, which is 20 years. Is it 20 years? Yes, I've been here 20 years. Wow. So it's just to clarify those things that are already operationally happening. The other item is parking enforcement authorization, and as you know, we're a Dillon rule state, so in order to have parking enforcement vendor, we need authority from the state. So currently, cities with the population of 40,000 or more have this authority. We are requesting that we be added, and the way we're describing that is in the code, you don't typically name the actual locality because the General Assembly Code is supposed to be a little broader in how it's public policy and affects certain cities or counties. So our approach is that we have 6 million visitors a year, and that makes us a much busier city than a typical city of 15,000 people. So Ms. Shelton has an amendment to that code that would allow cities that have visitation of more than 2 million people a year to also have this authority. So that's the approach we're taking. Another area that we have requests, not very often, but this year we did, our request from our residents to include items. And we do have a request from residents for us to have permitting regulatory authority over residential rental properties located near universities. So student rentals, the residents have asked us to ask the General Assembly for more regulatory authority over those uses. And now we'll look at our legislative timeline. As you can see, we were drafting gathering information and drafting through September. We've presented it to you today. For the next month, we're receiving input from you, our partner agencies, residents, others, about what should be in or out of the legislative agenda. This year, we have an election, so November 4th, all the House of Delegate seats are up for election, so we will not know who our delegate is until November 5th. And then we will come back to you at your November meeting and ask for formal adoption of your legislative agenda. So we can then schedule a legislative event with our senator delegate, and we also invite our federal legislators as well to discuss your priorities. Then the session will begin on January 14th. It is a long session, so it's after the election. After there's an election, it's a long session. So it's 60 days, so it should conclude in mid-March 2026. So that's the timeline. Oh, and I will mention, I had up there at the top, the pre-filing deadline is November 17th, and this year, if council agrees with staff's recommendations about the charter changes and the parking enforcement changes, we will want to have that pre-filed by, we'll have to wait till after the election to see who our delegate is, but we'll want to get those pre-filed ahead of November 17th for bills to be in the queue. So we're looking for your direction at this point, realizing that this is not, that we'll be gathering more information throughout the next month, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Always exciting time when we start putting these legislative agendas together and head to the General Assembly to try to lobby for our causes. And I still appreciate the approach of, being very succinct with three, high-level agenda items and then having some smaller ones, because as you say, members of the General Assembly are inundated with hundreds and hundreds of bills that they have to consider. And so I think being focused on a few is better. So I know we've talked about funding for K through 12 education, and that it seems to me at one of our last joint meetings there was a conversation about something that we should all be lobbying for, and maybe it's just more adequate funding. And I noticed that on our partner list, WJCC was not listed. Do they put together a legislative agenda? I'm sure they do. And have we made any attempts to contact them?
That's a great idea. We will absolutely do so.
Okay.
And I believe the legislation you're speaking of, it's been in front of the General Assembly for a couple of years. It's been vetoed by this governor, is for authority for localities to add another 1 cent to the sales tax that can be used for school construction.
So I think as we move forward over the next couple of weeks that we have that conversation with WJCC, see if there isn't something in their legislative agenda that we couldn't partner with to help advocate for them. So, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Michele. I know every year we talk about maintaining authority for local zoning, but I think it just to mention there's a whole lot of areas that fall under that, but I know some of the ones that have been discussed in recent years were like accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals. Sometimes people don't, they think we've overlooked something, but that local zoning falls, it's a big category, and I agree that it should be broad, that we capture everything under there, but just wanted to mention those because they've come up in the past. And then this one might be opening up
Pandora's box.
Do you anticipate that there might be any challenge to the localities that still appoint school board members?
There have been bills the last several sessions. The trend seems to be across the state turning on that. There are a number of jurisdictions that have elected school boards that have residents who are interested in reverting back to appointed school boards. So I don't know that that is quite the same issue that it was a couple of years ago.
Okay, thank you. And then just to the mayor's comment, I know I represent the city on the VML Legislative Committee along with Michele, and school funding. Right now, there's a list of topics, and they'll finalize it at the meeting in October, but we were to go through and prioritize their top 4 on their list, and school funding was on there. So I think that's one of the things that we submitted, we'd like to see VML support.
Chair.
Hi, thank you. Just two points. One is, you mentioned at the beginning, they're playing offense and there's playing defense. And I see, the preserving local authority over zoning issues is a good example of we're playing defense. But many of these are offensive, right? Things that we're asking for. So at what point in the process do we really kind of see where we are going to actually be the ones pushing back on something? Is that something that sort of develops after pre-filing, or is that something that we have a sense on now? Just kind of curious about when do we really know, oh, something's coming up that actually we have determined to be against our interest, and we want to make sure that one of our priorities is almost like pushing back against that.
Absolutely. So that does absolutely start at pre-filing and will continue to what is called crossover, when everything that the Senate has passed moves to the House and everything that the House has passed has moved to the Senate. Those are late nights reading through, trying to make sure you've caught everything. But we really rely on our partners. Virginia Municipal League is there with a robust staff doing the legislative education. We also work with McGuire Woods, who is helping us with trying to stay on top of all that. Also, we have a great relationship with the other Hampton Roads legislative liaisons. Some of them, this is their only job for their city, so they are actually living up in Richmond during that time and communicate through text and phone calls and emails constantly as we see. So we have partners who are also interested in the same things we are, and we all help each other be aware of what bills may appear. Because often that's a strategy for some people, is to not share that they're going to file a bill and hope they can get it through before the opposition builds. So we rely on our partners and ourselves to be aware of all that.
Thank you. And my other point, and this is just just looking for a pretty high level, not trying to get into the weeds, but we mentioned that on Thursday we have some charter amendments, and so I was just hoping to understand better the relationship between what we're talking about here in terms of a priority and what we're looking at for Thursday, just the relationship between those things.
Absolutely. So charter amendments is where we will be, to use the term, on the offense. So we will be requesting both on the Senate side and the House side pre-filing of that for us. And then we will need to be there to support our patrons who are carrying those bills at committee meetings. So we'll be answering questions from now. Hopefully, I can't imagine they'll ask many questions about us aligning our election date with the date they're required, but they may ask questions about our finance operations. So we will be there for any time a bill that we have asked to be filed is there. We will be at the committee meetings and at all the decision points in Richmond.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate the information. And I have a couple questions that sort of follow on to what's already been asked. So in reference to offensive versus defensive as it relates to zoning, I know in the past we have sometimes looked at programs to be sure that we have something on the books before there's the possibility of it getting upended, such as what we did with short-term rentals, which I think protected us during last year's session. Have we thought about anything that we could go ahead and do that might help us, not knowing what might come up in the General Assembly? Does that make any sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and I failed to recognize our city attorney, Chris Shelton, who plays also a very important role in our legislative work as she's hearing about these things and aware of those issues. And then, as she has in the past, brilliantly developing ways for us to stay ahead of that. So I will defer to her whether she's heard anything.
So the trend last year seemed to be, and it looks like there's going to be at least one bill that deals with religious institutions having the ability to build housing on property that they own. Based on the language of the bill last year, I'm not sure that there's anything that we can do to get ahead of that. ADUs have come and gone, and we may see them again. Those are really the only two things I can think of from a zoning perspective that I'm really watching for.
Okay, thank you. And as far as as the charter items, so do they take those as a group or individually, one at a time?
So it'll be one ordinance.
Request.
Yeah, one ordinance that includes all three amendments to the charter, which are largely housekeeping amendments.
Okay. And when we talked about sort of the way that we're looking at the parking, change to parking and putting in there cities that have more than 2 million visitors a year, are we aware of other municipalities that would fall under the same umbrella that could also support this?
So most of them are probably have enough population that they can
Okay.
do it now, but this makes it as broad as it can without reducing it to the point where it's meaningless for the smaller jurisdictions.
And right now, it's over 40,000, is that
Thousand.
what you said? Okay. And then, as far as the school funding, I seem to remember a few years ago, there was conversation about trying to get extra funding for us based on our higher than sort of normal English language learners and children, that might be experiencing homelessness, thinking that that was a niche way that we might be able to get some additional funding. I don't think anything has ever come of it, but it might be something when you talk to WJCC about a strategy.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Anything?
Yes, well, thank you for the information. I have no further questions.
Okay, so we will be working on this for the next month, and then in November, we will hopefully approve our legislative agenda at our Thursday meeting. Okay, perfect. Good. Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. Okay, takes us to council communications. Anybody have anything they'd like to add? I'll just remind everybody, we got scheduled meetings coming up, that tomorrow is National Night Out
Oh, right.
at 4:30 over here at the Stryker Center. So we hope that we get a good turnout from everybody in the community. But there on the agenda, you'll see a schedule of meetings throughout the rest of October into November. And with that, takes us now to open forum. Since there's no one here, no one wants to speak unless Mr. Braxton, ever present. No? Okay. Mr. Vice Mayor, I believe we have closed session.
We do. I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing a special award per subparagraph 11, the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body per subparagraph 29 regarding schools, and legal matters per subparagraph 8 for the purpose of consultation on specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel concerning code enforcement.
Thank you.
Second?
Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll go into closed session, and when we come back, we will certify the closed session, and that should conclude the meeting. Thank you very much. Open session. Mr. Vice Mayor?
I move to approve the certification of a closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey. Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire.
Aye.
Is there any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire.
Aye.
We are adjourned.